option of to San Francisco on a ship, and he came in the steerage class, the lower class on the ship. However, because he had many talents and charms, and because he had been the Hong Kong Cha-Cha champion in 1958, he was asked to come up to first class on the ship and demonstrate and teach dancing. So that was the introduction. When he got to San Francisco, he thought, well, I can make a living teaching dancing. So he was teaching dancing, and who should come to have dancing lessons? George. Where's Mary? George Lee and James Lee's brother Bob were taking dancing lessons from Bruce. So between the dancing lessons, Bruce would demonstrate some. And so Bob, James' brother, and George said to James Lee said, you ought to see this guy. He is one tough cat, And so that was James Lee's introduction to Bruce. And James had a long history of martial arts, of Kung Fu, Siulong Kung Fu, I think he started with. And then James and Alan were best friends. And so James told Alan, you got to meet this guy. So Alan and his family were taking a trip to Seattle in 1962 when it was the World's Fair. And James said, you got to go meet Bruce, he's in Seattle. And he was working and living at Ruby Chow's restaurant. And so Alan went over there, and long story short, about midnight one night, he met Bruce. And according to what I heard, when Bruce first met him, he thought, this is some Chinese guy who wants to challenge me. But quickly dispelled that, and they started exchanging techniques and all this, and became fast friends. So moving ahead, timeline, Bruce and I met at the University of Washington, and I started taking Kung Fu lessons from Bruce. And pretty soon I liked the instructor more than the instruction. Anyway, we had a lot of fun in those days, and Bruce was at the University of Washington majoring in philosophy, and he was in his third year, and I did my first year there. And he and James had been in constant communication. And so they had decided that they were going to open a school, a second school of Jianfan Kung Fu in Oakland. And so for Bruce and me, that was either Bruce was leaving or we were going to get married, and we were both moving to Oakland. We both moved to Oakland. And we lived at James Lee's house, and with his wife, Catherine, and their two kids, Gregor and Karina. Yeah. And so those were some fun days. And what was most fun about it was that Alan, George Lee, and a number of other guys, but those four, Jimmy, Bruce, Alan, and George, hung out together all the time. And there was a gym in the garage of the house, and they would be down there all the time, working out and just forming a friendship that has lasted forever, a lifelong friendship. And that's one of the reasons why we're all here, because of that wonderful friendship that they shared. And there are many lessons we can take from this friendship, and maybe learning something about what it means to be a friend, or how you might be inspired to be a better person because a friend has inspired you, or maybe just how to make every day count in your life. That was what Bruce and Alan, George, and Jimmy were all about. They lived life to the fullest. But let's trace that friendship back. So I told you that, let's see, in addition to when we lived in Oakland, and they were always getting together, and Bruce and I would often go down to Alan's store, and Bruce would have a root beer, and oh gosh, and Bruce was, he could tell so many jokes, and he was just fun all the time. He was really fun. And so we just traded so many visits and had so many times together with our families during those days. It was just great. And then we moved to Los Angeles eventually because Bruce eventually, did the Green Hornet, and then life went on from there. But Alan and the family, they used to come down and visit us. Bruce would fly up to Oakland, and it was back and forth. They just had a very good time together. Bruce even liked to give haircuts. He thought that he was kind of like a pro, giving haircuts. So you should have seen my hair. I had like this little pixie with no hair at all. But he cut Alan's hair too. I really surprised Annie when he came home. It wasn't his strong point. So, then Bruce went to Hong Kong. And, the history, he made movies, and he became so well known, so popular in Hong Kong. And people were coming to him and imploring him to be in their films, and this guy and that guy, and everybody was trying to get Bruce to do something for them. And it was hectic in Hong Kong when we lived there. Just 2 years, but it was hectic. And it was to the point where we could not go out walking on the street without a crowd following us, because everybody in Hong Kong knew him. He was so well known there. Not so much at that time in the rest of the world, but he would be. But anyway, it was during that time that Bruce really relied on his closest friends, Alan chief among them, to have a conversation with, to just talk about life and love and friendship and kung fu. And so he really relied on his close friendship with Alan, George, James, the whole family. Alan and Bruce, they shared many similarities in their life. Of course, both were Chinese, and they experienced some times of racial prejudice. And Alan was very helpful to Bruce because he was some years older, and he had learned how to deal with certain things. He knew that there was prejudice even in the Chinatown, not just out of Chinatown. And he chose to raise his family not in a Chinatown, and for his children to become American citizens. And that was important to him. And he and Bruce also, knew racial prejudice as well. Number one, in Hong Kong, because he was not full Chinese, and they knew that. And his mother was part German, and so that was kind of not so cool with a lot of Chinese people. So he had experienced that, and then, when he came to the Bay Area, some of the traditional Chinese didn't want him to be teaching non-Chinese, and that's an old historical thing that goes back to the Boxer Rebellion and everything, but, ended up in fights, and, probably the famous ones. And, but I liked what Alan said about overcoming prejudice. He said, change begins with the man in the mirror. So he was instrumental in trying to overcome people's racial feelings about Chinese. He fought in the war, whole story where he'd be the only Asian in this whole, So he had a lot of experience, both with prejudice and with acceptance. So, and, Bruce and he shared their love of martial arts, of course. And Alan had been a Chinese man to be of Northern California, which was huge. That was huge back in those days, 1946, right after the war, when nobody liked Asian people, right? It didn't matter, Japanese or whatever. So that, how did he get to that point? Because he was meticulous. Alan was meticulous in planning his routines, his diet, his regimen, everything to build his body and be the best that he could be. And who else was like that? Well, Bruce was. He planned things perfectly. You know, nothing happened by chance. He was prepared when the time came. But it was Alan that motivated Bruce to pay more attention to health and fitness and his body. And he showed him so many things about weightlifting the proper way and feeding your body while you're trying to build muscle just muscles, but for movement. That Bruce was all about the efficiency of movement. So they shared that. They also shared, Alan and Bruce, the ability to visualize. Important because if we could all be so mindful of where we want to get to, the goal we want to get to, and to stay on that path, we would all be more successful. But both and Bruce in visualizing where they wanted to go and what they wanted to achieve. Also, Alan was a wonderful example of a husband and father. And Bruce was just starting out with me, and so he was a wonderful example, and also of being a successful businessman. So that was a great inspiration for Bruce. Let's see, what else can I tell you about Bruce and Alan and James and George? You know, they have been called the Four Musketeers, the four of them. And I know you're going to hear from Lana later, but he wrote this book, Four Musketeers, and I hope you can all read it sometimes because it really goes back into how he became the person that he is, that we all love. And so anyway, that was the four of them. And now they're, yeah. And it does make me sad. He was a treasure in my life. But it also makes me glad that I knew him for years. Yeah. As long as So then 1973, and Bruce passed away. And ever since then, Uncle Alan, Uncle Alan and Auntie Annie, they've been looking after me and my family all these years, making sure we were okay and giving us inspiration. It's been wonderful to us, really like guardian. And by the way, they're not done with that yet. Still my guardian angel. Okay, I'll be yours too. And talked to me so much about Bruce's legacy, and really inspired me to protect Bruce's legacy. And now Shannon, my daughter, she's mainly in charge of that and just doing such a wonderful job, and just really about her dad. And she has just completed 100 podcasts talking about Bruce and mainly his philosophy. So if you ever get a chance to tune into something insightful. Alan and Annie used to send me boxes and boxes of See's chocolates. I loved them. Wait. Here, Annie. I have one for you. Alan has been on the board of the Bruce Lee Foundation. We started it in 1996. morphed into the Bruce Lee Foundation, but he was there from day one, Uncle Alan was, to support the cause of unifying Bruce's Jeet Kune Do and telling the world about his martial art and his philosophy. So Alan has participated in every event that we had, talking through value and how to help the world, and just been really a wonderful supporter and friend to Bruce. And so I really appreciate that. Oh, Alan even, I've been married 26 to another Bruce. Really good for me. His name is Bruce Cadwell. He's really a great guy. But Alan had to check him out beforehand. I wanted to meet him. He was okay for me. And he checked out. He's been approved. So, well, I just wonder if anybody has any questions they would like to ask me. Bruce and Alan. This one.
I was wondering, when was the first time you met Alan? Because it was probably one of those trips down from Seattle, right? With you and Bruce?
No, actually, I met Alan, married in 1964 and moved to Oakland to James' house. And that's when I first met Alan. Yeah, yeah. Because he would come to the house all the time. Oh. You know what? Okay, I guess I'll read this. This is a letter from Leo Fong. Everybody know Leo Fong? He also was one of the guys always when we lived there. So he wanted to have this message read today, so I'll just read it to you. I just wanted to share with the group a word or two about my Oakland Jungfan JKD colleague and friend. I am sorry I could not be with you all today for this celebration of life for Alan Joe. There were several people I developed a close friendship in the Oakland era of Bruce Lee. Among them were Jimmy Lee, David Cox, Bob Baker, Bruce Lee, and Alan Joe. Alan and I had a common interest in bodybuilding. In his younger years, he had a great physique. Actually, he did in his older years, too. I mean, even in his past 90, I go, hard as a rock. Anyway, I had just started lifting weights through the guidance of former Mr. Universe Bill Pearl. Alan was also interested in martial arts. I was living in Sacramento at the time. When I came into Oakland on my weekly training and conversation with Bruce and Jimmy, I also had a chance to share ideas with Alan Joe and David Cox. After the death of Jimmy Lee, followed by the passing of Bruce, I lost contact with Alan Joe. In 2012, at a Hall of Fame event sponsored by Grandmaster Andrew Fanelli, I met my old friend Alan Joe after over 40 years. It was a great reunion and a memorable weekend. We had much to talk about. I am sorry to have missed the celebration of life event.